If you're a paladin, you already know the future is looking pretty bright in Cataclysm for us. Getting an actual interrupt in all three specs, a much more interesting priority system, also known as a rotation, some pretty fun DPS cooldowns, and so much more. The pre-patch is literally right upon us, and there's still a couple of things you might want to do right now before either A, some of these things get more expensive in terms of time taken to earn the currency, or B, you're going to have to be paying an inflated amount of gold when people realise how glyphs actually convert over. That's not the sole purpose of this video though. I want to give you the tools to pump to the best of your ability during the pre-patch. There's a lot of doom and gloom around the fact we won't have that one ability that we're actually balanced around in Cataclysm, which is Inquisition. Inquisition is a management buff that when we get to 81 should have very close to 100% uptime because it increases all our holy damage by 30%. Missing this will no doubt feel strange for us that already are very familiar with the cata Ret playstyle, but there is one massive saving grace: haste. With only going from historic sims such as the 4.3.4 version of Simcraft, the stat weights do seem pretty clear cut. Outside of strength, hit and expertise, you want to be going for mastery first, then crit, then haste. We know more modern sims have a good possibility to change that, but what we think we know at the moment would be mastery, then crit, then haste. I would deviate from this massively though during the pre-patch, and providing Blizzard fix very clear bugs that Ret Paladin is currently dealing with, this is both on the beta and the PTR, we will actually be in a pretty good spot even without Inquisition. So we'll dive into all of that, but first, if you plan on quest stacking ahead of launch, Rested XP will be releasing, if it's not already released by the time I edit this video, a guide that will get you well past 81. Of course, depending on what you've done on your character. As an example, my Ret Paladin, which I've played all through Wrath, can get 1.8 million XP, and this will be prepared all during the pre-patch. Whereas my fresh boosted Shaman, which has done nothing at all, can get a whopping 2.5 million. Obviously, the leveling guides are all available now as well. It is an affiliate link, and it's in the pinned comment below and the description, and obviously any guides you buy go towards supporting the channel. So I was going to leave the rotation changes in the pre-patch and the stats I personally will be prioritising until last, but actually we can tie everything in together. Just to clarify first though, the bugs that are negatively affecting you, me and every other Ret Paladin on the beta or PTR at the moment is all recent character copies, even when you're Ret, are using the cooldown of Crusader Strike from Protection. So it's showing as a 3-second cooldown, but of course it should be 4.5. So if you've gone on there and you're like, oh my god, I can almost get a 1.5 second cooldown Crusader Strike with the amount of haste I've got, that won't be the case. But if the other bugs that currently exist get fixed where a haste reduction of Crusader Strike isn't receiving the benefit from the 5% haste from the likes of Shadow Priests, Boomies and Shamans, we can get it down to 3 seconds, and during the pre-patch will pretty much be the only realistic and viable time that you're going to be able to do this. I want to put it out there, this does actually feel fantastic by the way. The rotation with no Inquisition is so face roll you can pump as hard as you can while reading a really good book. There is one thing though which you might be thinking, and you might even be writing a comment about at the moment. Why would spell haste from Boomies, Shadow Priests and Elemental Shamans or Shamans in general make a difference to Crusader Strike? Well, yeah, you would have kind of thought something like Wind Fury Totem would actually be the thing that's going to reduce the cooldown of Crusader Strike, but no, it's actually spell haste modifiers. There is more than this that's not working at the moment as well. During Burst, where you're going to have Zealotry up, which we will talk about briefly in a minute, you should be able to massively reduce the amount of haste you need and get PI from a Priest instead. This will act the same way, where it will bring the cooldown down so you can just constantly go from Crusader Strike into Templar's Verdict, back to Crusader Strike, and then Templar's Verdict again. The thing is, even that's not working, and I would say there's two ways to go. You absolutely can just get a little bit of haste to the point where PI is going to push you over the edge, but then outside of cooldowns, the rotation just feels pretty bad. Because without Inquisition, and there seems to be a really low proc chance on Art of War at the moment, having to put 2 fillers between each Crusader Strike just doesn't feel great. Now, if you're not aware, Sanctity of Battle is the big thing here. This is in the Ret tree, which reduces the cooldown of your Crusader Strike based on haste. Now the problem is, without raid buffs working, getting down to a 3-second cooldown is going to be incredibly tough. It will be tough for me at least, because I'm not absolute full bis, I'm missing a couple of pieces, and this brings me onto what I'm personally buying now before the Justice Point change happens. And that's the War Token, so the haste and attack power stacking trinket. This is an insane amount of haste going towards a magic number that you're going to need, which is 1015. So with raid buffs and 3 points in Judgments of the Pure, which is in the first tier of the Holy Tree, alongside 1015 haste, this is going to bring you down to a 3-second cooldown Crusader Strike. Without swapping out my Death's Choice for the War Token, I can't get anywhere near 1015, and quite honestly, even simming the difference between the War Token and Death's Choice currently in our gear It's only a couple of hundred DPS absolute max. Obviously, you can't go by that sim for the pre-patch, but I was just interested to see how bad it's considered versus Death's Choice now. And actually, it's really not that bad. But what this is going to enable you to do is only ever have to put one filler between each Crusader Strike. So you're going to get much faster holy powers to be able to use more Templar's Verdicts. So if you're struggling to get near that 1015 haste mark, you might want to pick yourself up the war token as well now, because obviously we're in older content technically when the pre-patch hits, so the amount of justice points we're getting from bosses and from dungeons is massively reduced. You'd be better off maybe just using some of the emblems that you was leaving to convert over into gold. So first of all, what's my spec going to look like? I've seen loads of specs online being posted around, and honestly, none of them put 3 points into Judgments of the Pure. But I do think that's because people are sleeping on how good haste is actually going to be. Now, I'm personally going to sacrifice the 12% crit chance for the full 9% haste, and also an outlier that I'm seeing people not pick up is Eye for an Eye. Now, all magic attacks against you have a 40% chance to cause 30% of the damage taken back to the attacker as well. Now, there's lots of unavoidable AoE spell damage that's going off in ICC during the pre-patch, and this will count. You don't have to be tanking the mob or be its primary target, so this is literally free damage. And to be fair, the only thing you're going to have to sacrifice for this spec is Repentance, which you're going to hardly ever use anyway. Obviously, if you plan on PvPing, your spec's going to look very different. I am talking in terms of a pure PvE spec. I will stick a link in the description to the talent spec and the glyphs I plan on using, but the only thing I will say about glyphs is I'm even currently torn myself between Crusader Strike and Exorcism. The proc rate on Art of War is something else I would say is clearly bugged. It's just not proccing an awful amount, and ideally, you want it proccing a lot to be your filler between Crusader Strikes. With it in its current state though, Crusader Strike is always your number 1 or number 2 most damaging ability, so another 5% crit on it could start to outperform Exorcism. So just play around with that yourself and use whatever feels better for you. Templar's Verdict and Seal of Truth should never change. Use these all the time. This actually leads me nicely onto the point I made at the start about paying over the odds in gold for something if you leave it too long. Don't get me wrong, we're not talking thousands of gold here, we're talking maybe 100 or something. You now know what glyphs you need. You can go and get all of these off the auction house or have someone make them for you, and you're probably like, wait, but Templar's Verdict don't even exist. Well, no, it's not, but if you make sure you have the glyph of Divine Storm in your bag before the pre-patch, that will turn into your Templar's Verdict. The other two glyphs you can already make sure that you've got anyway, so this is the only one which I would really worry about going and picking up now. And I'll actually put a link in the description to a full list of what the glyphs convert to, which I actually saw on the Paladin Discord earlier. You got to remember, as soon as patch day comes and everyone's looking at their glyph panel, they're going to be rushing to the auction house and buying every single glyph for their class, so inevitably the prices are going to go up for a few weeks. If you want a final quick look at what I will be doing priority-wise, as in rotation-wise during the pre-patch, then let's round the video out with that. Again, I'm not saying some of this might not get proved wrong and it turns out actually bosses are dying so fast that mastery is going to be king and you'll just rely on haste cooldowns to actually get you to 3 seconds. But I still don't think the bosses are going to die so quick that that would be a good idea, because outside of those cooldowns, the rotation, as I say, is going to feel pretty diabolical. This is me on the beta. I am 82, so I've got Inquisition, but I'm not using it, and I've got a 4.2 second cooldown on Crusader Strike, and you'll see every time I need to do 2 fillers, and there is going to be times where you've got nothing to press. Nothing's procced, and you're literally stood there for a second waiting for Crusader Strike to come back off cooldown. And that's the thing that I don't like. Now, this is on a bugged character on the PTR that's got like 2.2 second cooldown on Crusader Strike, but due to global cooldowns, obviously, that's kind of irrelevant anyway. But you can see straight away, it's Crusader Strike, another ability, Crusader Strike, another ability, and you always want to be using Crusader Strike as your top priority, providing you're not on free holy power. So even if you've got a Divine Purpose proc or an Art of War proc, if your Crusader Strike is off cooldown and you're on 1 or 2 holy power, you should be prioritizing Crusader Strike, then consuming one of the procs, then Crusader Strike, then consume the other proc. In that example, obviously, you would want to consume Divine Purpose first, so you would use your Templar's Verdict, then another Crusader Strike, and then finally Exorcism to get rid of that proc. But overall, I'm going to be following exactly this. So it will always be Crusader Strike, then filler. Rinse and repeat until free holy power, and then you'll be using Templar's Verdict. The order in which I'm prioritizing the fillers will be Divine Purpose procs, use a Templar's Verdict. Failing that, it will be Exorcism with an Art of War proc. Failing that, it will be Judgment. Failing that, it would be Holy Wrath. And finally, it would be Consecrate. Now, I've got to admit, I barely ever get to the point of ever using Consecrate, which is kind of a good thing because it's very, very mana intensive. It will change up slightly because whenever you hit 3 Holy Power, you always want to be using Templar's Verdict, and you never want to be using Crusader Strike while you're on 3 Holy Power because you're losing a Holy Power essentially by using that GCD. So what you'll find will sometimes happen, you'll be on 3 Holy Power and you'll get a Divine Purpose proc. Just do 2 back-to-back Templar's Verdicts to consume the proc and then to use the Holy Power, then straight back into the normal priority system where Crusader Strike is king. Of course, you are going to have Zealotry in the pre-patch. You want to literally just bind this with Avenging Wrath, and the first time you reach 3 Holy Power, or you know that you're going to have cooldowns at a later stage of the fight, and of course, maybe you do save it if you can't get 2 uses of it, but you're going to want to use Zealotry and Avenging Wrath together, Potion, anything else you've got to increase damage, and now all you're going to do is Crusader Strike, Templar's Verdict, Crusader Strike, Templar's Verdict, rinse and repeat until your cooldowns are gone, and then go back to the standard priority system. I do want to put out there again, some of this information could change because we've got no sims, we've got buggy spells, we've got bugged raid buffs. It's just very difficult to really hammer down exactly what is going to be the best, but this is personally what I'm going to at least be starting with. And the results I've seen so far have been pretty fun. So hopefully this helped you get prepped for the pre-patch a bit as a Ret Paladin, and if anything changes over the next week or so, if we find better ways of doing things, I'll be sure to update you with another video. I hope you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.